Education Minister Richard Bruton during the week, you might have heard, and an amendment to the Equal Status Bill. Well, he said that, look, you know what? If the state is funding schools, we don't want any barrier being put in the way of any child getting in there, particularly a religious one, namely, have you got your baptism? And he said, so we're going to change the law, but we're also going to make sure that in doing that, we don't punish schools who are minority faiths. You know, for instance, if it was Muslim, Jewish, just think off the top of my head. And so that they will be allowed to turn down people because they just won't have the places in their minority religion. So to discuss this and debate this, first of all, I'm going to be speaking to Jane Donnelly of Atheist Ireland. Jane, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
Jane, I'm not too bad. Jane, you're Human Rights Officer with Atheist Ireland.
Yes.
And thanks, Jane, for coming on with us. Jane, the Catholic Church would say, hang on, and David Quinn had a piece in the Irish Independent, this is actually discriminating against the Catholic Church.
Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? But I think the first thing to point out is that the right to education belongs to the child, not their parents. It's on the child's back that right. It's the essence of the right. Now, states are supposed to respect parents' convictions when they're providing that education. So the first thing to note is that every child has a right of access to their local publicly funded school without religious discrimination. And that's what we are looking for. And that's what a lot of minorities in Ireland don't have at the moment, because they haven't got a right of access to their local publicly funded school without religious discrimination, because most of the schools in Ireland are Catholic, and the Protestant school, there's 191 primary Protestant schools, Church of Ireland, and they discriminate against as well. So what the Minister has done this week is he's trying to fine-tune the religious discrimination that is there, and it is unjust and unfair, and we are challenging that.
All right. Jane, the Catholic Church would say that, hang on a second, this, if it ever happens today, and they'd say it's a rarity if it ever happens at all, that the main discrimination in Ireland has to do with money and income status and also where you live.
Of course it is. Of course, there's a lot of discrimination on social grounds, and I'd be the first one to point that out. But in terms of religion, you cannot discriminate in access to a child to their local publicly funded school. You cannot do that under human rights law. It is discrimination. It just can't happen. It undermines the dignity of the child and their family. So this is the right, and this is what the state has to fulfil in order to fulfil its international obligations. Now, we live in a state at the moment, a republic, where there are children that cannot get access to their local school because they're refused, because they can't produce a baptism certificate, or they're refused if they're trying to get into a local Church of Ireland school because they're not of the Church of Ireland religion. And that is what happens now. You cannot provide a religious education or a particular type of education for every different family in the country. There are over 120 different religions now. So just because you belong to a minority doesn't mean that your child gives up their right to access to their local publicly funded school. And that is what is happening now. And that is what we are trying to get rid of. And remember that the issue is not just over access to schools. It's about what happens in schools. We accept that this discrimination is only happening in about 20% of schools. But in all the schools that minorities have to attend, the religious schools, discrimination happens within the school day because they can't opt out of religion. If they do, they're at the back of the class. Religion is integrated into curriculum, and in essence, the children from minorities are being evangelised mostly into the Catholic faith when they're accessing their right to education.
Okay, all right. Listen, Jane, you made a very clear case there. Thank you for joining us. That's Jane Donnelly there of Atheist Ireland.